Hello, and welcome to part two of my two-part series, The Common Core Goes to College, adapted from a talk delivered at Fullerton College in May 2014. I'm Dr. Bettina Shea from California State University Long Beach, the Teacher Education Department. And in this short video, we'll talk about curricular implications related to the Common Core state standards for both secondary schools and for community colleges. So in the last video, we had a chance to overview some of the key shifts involved in the new standards. And now I'd like to briefly discuss some important implications for current secondary teachers, some of whom are up in arms over the Common Core. The reason they are so up in arms is because of the fundamental nature of some of the shifts to curriculum instruction, particularly for English and math veterans, but to some degree for all teachers. The first response from a lot of English teachers is fear at moving away from a 100% literature-based classroom. From speaking with several foundational English teachers at the community college and four-year university level, this shift will not be as monumental at the post-secondary level, as many instructors have moved away from a fully literature-based foundational course. But at the high school level, many English classes are still solely focused on literature. The second response comes from non-English teachers who are concerned about having to teach content-related literacy in relation to content. Many non-English teachers express concern about not knowing how to teach specific content-based strategies to support student development in content area literacy. And they see the area of teaching literacy as an additional burden rather than a tool to help promote more independent access to material. The third response comes from veteran mathematics teachers who may themselves have been successful in mathematics, particularly through the use of mnemonic devices and procedural instruction. These instructors will need support in making the major instructional and curricular shifts for students and perhaps in their own content and pedagogical content knowledge as they move from more traditional formations to a new way of instructing in mathematics. I mentioned these three shifts for teachers to emphasize that these professional shifts are a huge adjustment at the secondary level. And because of their fundamental nature, they will almost certainly take several years before full implementation. So even though schools all over the state are piloting Smarter Balance tests now, and some districts have been working on Common Core implementation since 2010, a full shift is going to take several years and a commitment to weather the initial firestorm and backlash as we muddle through these changes. More importantly than the curricular shifts for secondary teachers, however, is certainly what a strong implementation of the Common Core standards will mean for your future students as community college instructors. I've highlighted four key things that K-12 students should expect in their instruction in the era of the Common Core. First is a greater emphasis on literacy, communication of knowledge, and academic vocabulary throughout the curriculum and instruction, or rather across the board. Although I didn't specifically mention the college and career readiness anchor standards embedded in the Common Core English Language Arts and Literacy standards, or the mathematical practices that are a core part of the Common Core math standards, these standards, along with the Next Generation Science Standards and C3 historical thinking frameworks, all highlight the importance of being able to make meaning from a variety of sources, including traditional and media-based text, being able to communicate one's knowledge orally in writing with models, and sometimes in combinations of oral, written, and demonstration-based presentation. A second key shift that students will see in the Common Core era is a greater emphasis on problem solving, communication, and mathematical reasoning in math classes. No longer will being able to produce a correct answer be the pinnacle of mathematical knowledge, but the process of mathematical reasoning, beginning as early as the primary grades, will be emphasized. Students can choose from various models and may well choose more traditional or simpler methods, but their understanding of alternative methods help to build schema or knowledge for the development of more complex concepts. So it's not, as critics might say, a more complex method that is overcomplicating math. It is exposing students to mathematical concepts that then allow students to further critical mathematical reasoning. Third is a greater focus throughout the curriculum on reading expository, rhetorical, and informational text. This is specifically in response to college and career readiness, where only a small percentage of students will go on to major in literature, but many more will pursue college and career pathways which require extensive independent access to text. Finally, and perhaps most controversially, is a change to assessment measures that students will take to prove their competence in relation to these standards um, to these standards. And these assessments, which are similar to many prepackaged curriculum models that are currently being marketed. And these are what we'll look at next. What we'll be looking at in the next few slides are examples taken from the 11th grade level Smarter Balance sample assessment items. The 11th grade test, as is discussed in research on this area, is seen as a proxy for college readiness. This is an example of an 11th grade vocabulary item. A few key features that I'd like to note. The first is that it's a scientific content area text, based primarily in astronomy or astrophysics, but with allusions to biology as it refers to the size of a DNA strand, and also the expectation of an understanding of prefixes such as nano, signifying a small subunit of measure. The word being tested is the understanding of the word disgorging, which is certainly not a common word, and the choices are relatively similar, prompting a nuanced or extremely precise understanding of the word. One of the important points to note about the multiple choice items on the SBAC assessment is that they are adaptive items, which means that, like the GRE, they will adjust based on student responses, becoming harder or easier during the course of the exam based on questions answered correctly or incorrectly. The next assessment question is taken from the same text and is an example of a response-based item that requires close reading from the text and demonstration of the ability to make an evidence-based claim. The claim is made in the text itself, and the students are required to find evidence for the claim within the text, thus making it a text-dependent question. They then must type their responses in the box provided. The technology aspect of the test that some educators fear will put students who do not have strong keyboarding skills at a disadvantage when compared with students with strong keyboarding and technology-based skills. This slide is an example of a free response math problem. Students can do their initial calculations on scratch paper as it is provided to all students, but they are then required to show their calculations and apply their mathematical knowledge to this problem, considering the variables given. Here we see all three aspects of rigor: conceptual knowledge, procedural fluency, and application, as students must again use evidence, in this case mathematical evidence, to support their claim that one car will ultimately cost less for Tony to buy and use. Our final example from the 11th grade assessment involves equivalencies related to different three-dimensional objects. Students are able to manipulate the amount of water in tank A that gets transferred to tank B, and must again demonstrate applied knowledge based on their conceptual understanding of the volume formulas of both a prism and a cylinder, and their procedural fluency in calculating the approximate values of the missing radius of tank B. Within this, they'll need to know the volume formulas for the two objects, be able to solve for the amount of water transferred from the prism-shaped tank to the cylindrical tank, and use that volume to calculate the value of the radius approximately. If we go even further, since the number will be inexact, this also requires foundational skills, or multiplying, dividing, and place value, so we can see the progression of math required for this problem. What are the implications of the Common Core for community colleges in supporting student transition? There are three direct implications, all of which are elaborated in a research article which I will attach to this video notes. The first is the use of the SBAC 11th grade assessment as a college readiness indicator. One of the features that the report notes that has been demonstrated through the Early Assessment Program partnership between the Cal States and high schools is that when students are aware of their lack of college readiness and given the chance to take college-aligned coursework in high school, they take those opportunities, such as the ERWC Expository Reading and Writing course, out of a desire to enter college without having to take remediation courses. If community colleges, as well as other institutes of higher education, begin accepting the 11th grade SBAC assessment as a proxy for college readiness, this will help in the transition process for students. Additionally, if community colleges and IHEs continue partnering with their secondary feeder districts to help identify students that may need support to be college ready, this will significantly reduce the need for developmental curriculum at the community college level. Finally, the foundational course and developmental courses still necessary. Finally, for the foundational or developmental classes still necessary, the California community colleges can work to align such courses with the California Common Core standards in a way that helps to bridge students' secondary and post-secondary experiences. What do these shifts mean for community college instructors? There are three implications that I think are foundational and important for instructors at the community college level, particularly for those teaching developmental courses. The first implication is working with, knowing, and aligning developmental curriculum to the grade 11-12 California Common Core standards. While much of what you already do may be aligned with the standards, it's important to help students make those explicit connections to languages and practices that they already may know and be familiar with from their secondary schooling experiences. This will scaffold the skills that students still need to build. The Common Core, throughout the standards, demonstrates an awareness that students do not all learn the same way and at the same pace. So it's important to be aware that some students may still need significant supports and scaffolds to help them meet these career and college level demands. The second implication is again something that may already be happening, and that is integrating a range of texts, forms, and genres of writing into the classroom. A key feature of the Common Core is an emphasis on increasingly sophisticated understandings of a wide range and variety of texts, including tables, political cartoons, and short essays, but also including novels and lengthy nonfiction pieces. Students must know how to consider a wide variety of audiences and make their writing comprehensible and appropriate to particular purposes and particular audiences. Finally, in all content areas, but particularly in mathematics, there must be, and again, this may already be happening at the community college level, but there must be an increased focus on students being able to communicate their knowledge and problem solve using flexible methods. This is critical not only to develop mathematical understandings, but fundamentally to help students develop essential habits of mind or soft skills that can aid them in any field they wish to pursue. To help you visualize the way that the new standards promote overlapping principles, practices, and critical thinking, I wanted to end with a few resources. One of them is this Venn diagram of overlapping practices in math and language arts literacy, which of course are the foci of the Common Core and science, which is a new set of standards called the Next Generation Science Standards that we haven't addressed in depth in these two talks. This diagram is helpful in seeing the connections to practice that extend beyond our own content area to the work of our colleagues. If there can be an emphasis on these common practices across content areas, students, whether secondary or post-secondary, will have a greater sense of cohesion in their learning. Finally, this slide gives a few more references for resources that I found helpful in terms of instruction and that may be helpful for you as you do some affinity group work or other group work. Or individual work on this topic. These resources are listed here. This concludes the second half of The Common Core Goes to College. Good luck with all of your attempts in working with the Common Core at the community college and secondary level. Thank you.